My name is Eden Parker, 32, and I never expected my sister Laura to publicly disown me during our parents' anniversary dinner. For 15 years, I believed I had finally found my forever family after bouncing through foster care. That night at Bellamy's, the restaurant, where we shared countless celebrations, I learned blood ties speak louder than adoption papers. What should have been a joyous reunion became the night that redefined family for me. Before I share what happened, tell me where you're watching from, and hit subscribe to join my journey. The morning of my parents' anniversary, I stood in my apartment in downtown Boston, staring at my reflection in the full-length mirror. At 32, I had built a life I was proud of. As a senior financial advisor at Hamilton and Reed, I had just received a promotion to partner that came with an office overlooking the harbor and a substantial raise. Success had found me after years of hard work, determination, and the stability that the Parkers had given me when they welcomed me into their home. I smoothed down the navy blue dress I had chosen for tonight's celebration, remembering the day Thomas and Margaret Parker signed the adoption papers. I was 17, already aging out of the system after bouncing between 11 foster homes since I was 6. Most people don't want teenagers, especially ones with my history of withdrawn behavior and trust issues. But the Parkers were different. "You're a Parker now, Eden," Thomas had said, his hand steady on my shoulder. "This isn't temporary. This is forever." Margaret had cried happy tears, hugging me tightly. "We may have found you later than we hoped, but you're exactly where you belong." Their biological daughter, Laura, was 15, then 2 years younger than me. I remember her initial shyness giving way to excited chatter about having a sister. "We can share clothes and do each other's makeup," she had exclaimed, showing me her collection of teen magazines and introducing me to her friends as my sister Eden. For the first time since my biological mother had abandoned me, I felt safe, wanted. The Parkers gave me stability during those critical years when I finished high school and went on to college. They attended my graduation, threw birthday parties for me, and included me in every family portrait and Christmas card. For 15 years, I truly believed I had found my forever home. Thomas and Margaret were celebrating their 35th wedding anniversary today. The pandemic had kept our extended family apart for nearly 2 years, making tonight's gathering at Bellamy's, an upscale restaurant downtown, even more special. Everyone would be there: Aunt Judith and Uncle Philip from Thomas's side, Aunt Patricia and her husband from Margaret's side, and all the cousins. 15 people in total. As a surprise, I had arranged to pay for everyone's dinner. The reservation was in my name, and I had spoken with the restaurant manager to ensure they would bring the bill directly to me at the end of the night. It was my way of thanking the family that had given me so much. I checked the time and carefully wrapped my gift, a custom-made photo album chronicling my parents' 35 years together, including the 15 I had been privileged to share with them. I had spent weeks gathering photos from relatives, scanning old pictures, and writing personal messages beside each memory. My phone buzzed with a text from my cousin Taylor. "Can't wait to see you tonight. It's been too long." I smiled, texting back, "See you soon. I've missed everyone so much." In the taxi on the way to Bellamy's, I scrolled through family photos on my phone. There was last Christmas before the pandemic, all of us in matching sweaters by the fireplace. There was the summer trip to Maine 3 years ago, where Thomas had taught me to sail. My college graduation with Margaret, crying proudly. These memories sustained me through the isolation of lockdown and the pressure of my demanding job. My colleagues at Hamilton and Reed had noticed my excitement about the family gathering all week. "You're practically glowing," my assistant Diane had commented that afternoon. "This dinner must be really important to you." They're everything to me, I had replied simply. After losing my biological mother to addiction and never knowing my father, the stability and love the Parkers provided had transformed my life. Without them, I wouldn't have had the confidence to excel in school, pursue my career, or develop healthy relationships. Everything good in my life could be traced back to that day when I became Eden Parker. I arrived at Bellamy's 30 minutes early, wanting to make sure everything was perfect. The restaurant was as elegant as I remembered, with its crystal chandeliers and white tablecloths. I had requested their best table, a circular one, in a semi-private alcove, with a view of the Boston skyline at sunset. Miss Parker, everything is arranged, as you requested, the hostess assured me as she led me to the table. The champagne will be served after the main course, and we have noted that you'll be handling the bill discreetly at the end of the evening. I thanked her, setting my parents' gift on a side table and placing a small gift bag at each place, setting custom keychains with the family crest for everyone. My heart was full of anticipation, imagining the joy on my parents' faces when they saw the whole family gathered together after so long. Tonight was going to be perfect. My parents texted to say they were running late. A traffic accident on the highway had them stuck at a standstill. "Start without us," my father wrote. "We should be there in about 45 minutes." As the first family members began to arrive, I stood by the entrance to greet them. Aunt Judith and Uncle Philip came first, followed by cousins Sophia and Ryan. They seemed genuinely happy to see me, though Aunt Judith immediately asked, "Laura's not here yet," as she looked around the restaurant. "Not yet, but she should be here soon," I replied, trying not to let it bother me that I wasn't enough of a welcoming committee on my own. When Laura arrived with her husband Blake, her greeting to me was noticeably cool, a quick hug, barely making contact, and then she was brushing past me to enthusiastically embrace Aunt Judith. "Oh my goodness, I've missed you so much," she exclaimed, as if they hadn't been on a video call just last week, a call I hadn't been invited to join. "Let's get some photos before Mom and Dad get here," Laura suggested, pulling out her phone. She positioned the family members in front of the restaurant's elegant fireplace, directing everyone where to stand. When I moved to join the group, she said, "Oh, Eden, would you mind taking the picture instead? You have the longest arms." I obliged, taking several photos before suggesting, "Now let me get in one too." "Actually, let's get some of just the cousins first," Laura redirected, taking the phone from me. Somehow, by the time we had cycled through various combinations of people, I had only managed to be in 2 photos both times, positioned awkwardly at the edge where I could easily be cropped out later. As we settled at the table, Aunt Judith turned her attention to me. "So, Eden, have you ever tried to find your biological family? I was watching this documentary about adoptees reuniting with their birth parents. Fascinating stuff." I tensed slightly, but kept my smile in place. "I haven't pursued that, no. The Parkers are my family. But aren't you curious about your medical history, your heritage, your real roots?" she pressed. Before I could respond, Laura jumped in. "Speaking of family heritage, Dad finally agreed to discuss what happens to Grandma Parker's jewelry collection. You know how important it is that those pieces stay with blood relatives who can pass them down through generations." I felt a small sting at her words, but told myself she probably didn't mean anything by it. Still, I couldn't help noticing how the conversation shifted whenever I tried to participate. When I mentioned a childhood memory of a family vacation to Cape Cod, Laura quickly corrected me. "That was the summer before you came, Eden. You're thinking of a different trip." But I wasn't. I had the photos to prove it. Yet rather than contradict her in front of everyone, I simply nodded and fell silent. From across the table, I caught Laura whispering something to our cousin Taylor, who then glanced at me with an expression of pity before quickly looking away. What had Laura told her? The unease I'd been trying to dismiss grew stronger. When I tried to help with the seating arrangements, as more relatives arrived suggesting we keep spaces close to the head of the table for our parents, Laura overruled me. "I've already worked out the seating. Mom specifically asked me to handle it," she said, though I knew for a fact that I had been the one coordinating most of the anniversary plans with our mother. As our aunts and uncles inquired about our parents' arrival time, I noticed they directed their questions to Laura rather than me, despite the fact that I was the one who had been texting with them. It was as if I had been silently demoted from daughter to distant acquaintance in their eyes. Then I overheard Uncle Philip commenting to Aunt Patricia, "Laura is so much like Margaret, isn't she? Those Parker family genes really show through." A normal observation, perhaps, but the way they both glanced at me afterward made it feel pointed. I took a sip of water, trying to quell the growing knot in my stomach. I was being oversensitive, surely. This evening was about celebrating my parents, not about me. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. When Laura pulled out a place card and set it at the far end of the table, I saw my name written in her flowery script. She had positioned me as far from our parents as possible, while placing herself directly between them. "I thought we weren't doing place cards," I said quietly. "Oh, I just made a few to make sure everyone important has the right spot," Laura replied, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. As we waited for our parents, Laura produced a family photo album I had never seen before. "Look what I put together for Mom and Dad," she announced proudly, passing it around the table. I leaned in to look, as it made its way around, noticing immediately that many of the family events depicted included photos where I had been present. Yet I was missing from the album's version. There was our trip to Niagara Falls 3 summers ago, a photo I specifically remembered because a kind stranger had taken it of all 4 of us. Yet in Laura's album, the photo showed only her with our parents. My heart sank as I realized this wasn't coincidental. Laura had systematically selected photos that excluded me, or worse, she had edited me out. The narrative she was creating erased 15 years of my life with the Parkers. And based on the admiring comments from our relatives, no one else found this strange or concerning. When I excused myself to use the restroom, I took a moment to lean against the sink, breathing deeply. The evening had barely begun, and I was already fighting back tears. All my careful preparations, coordinating with the restaurant, arranging to pay the bill, selecting thoughtful gifts, suddenly seemed naive. There was an undercurrent here I hadn't anticipated, and I felt woefully unprepared to navigate it. "Pull yourself together," I whispered to my reflection. "This is about Mom and Dad, not you or Laura." But as I rejoined the table, I couldn't help wondering if the family I had believed was mine for 15 years had been an illusion all along. The restaurant's elegant doors opened to reveal my parents finally arriving. Thomas looking distinguished in his tailored suit, and Margaret radiant in a deep burgundy dress I had helped her select last month. I stood up, moving toward them with open arms, but Laura somehow reached them first, embracing them both tightly. "Mom, Dad, happy anniversary," she exclaimed loudly, drawing the attention of nearby diners. When it was finally my turn to greet them, their embraces felt briefer, more distracted. My father patted my shoulder absently while scanning the table to see who else had arrived. My mother's usual warm hug was replaced with a quick kiss on my cheek as her eyes followed Laura. "Eden, you look nice," she said before turning to admire Laura's dress in detail. "Oh, honey, you're wearing the earrings Grandma Parker gave you. They look stunning with that neckline." We returned to the table where I discovered Laura had rearranged the seating again, somehow managing to place both herself and Blake directly beside our parents. I found myself wedged between Uncle Philip and a cousin's new boyfriend I had never met before. As appetizers were served, Laura dominated the conversation. Remember when we went to Italy for Mom and Dad's 25th anniversary? Those family trips were so special, just the three of us exploring Rome together. I frowned slightly. That was their 27th anniversary, and I was there too. I have pictures of all four of us at the Trevi Fountain. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table until Laura laughed lightly. Oh, Eden, you're thinking of our trip to Chicago that same year. Easy mistake to make. But it wasn't a mistake. I clearly remembered learning to say gelato per favor and my father photographing me with my mother in the Sistine Chapel. Yet several relatives were nodding along with Laura as if my memories were the fabricated ones. When it came time for gifts, I reached for the photo album I had so carefully created. Mom, Dad, I wanted to give you something that captures 35 amazing years. Actually, Laura interrupted. Standing up dramatically, Blake and I have something special to share first. She proceeded to present an elaborate crystal vase that immediately captured everyone's attention. This is hand-blown Venetian glass from the same artist who made the piece Grandma Parker left to Mom, she explained. I wanted you to have a matching set that represents our family heritage. My carefully crafted photo album sat forgotten by my side as Laura continued. And that's not all. I've been working on something even more meaningful. She produced an elegantly bound book. I've traced our family genealogy back 7 generations. I discovered we're directly descended from one of Boston's founding families. Our blood runs deep in this city's history. Blood runs deep echoed in my ears as relatives excitedly passed the genealogy book around, exclaiming over shared physical traits and historical connections that by definition excluded me entirely. A memory surfaced from years ago shortly after my adoption. Laura, then 16, snapping at me during a minor disagreement. You're not a real Parker anyway. She had apologized immediately, and I had attributed it to normal teenage sibling rivalry. Now I wondered if that moment had revealed her true feelings all along. As dinner progressed, I noticed Laura kept meeting various family members' eyes with meaningful glances. Had she been talking to them privately before tonight, setting the stage for whatever was happening? My suspicions grew when Blake, Laura's husband of 3 years, made what he clearly thought was a humorous observation. You know what they say, you can choose your friends, but you're stuck with family. Well, unless you're the one being chosen, right, Eden? He chuckled, looking around the table expectantly. Several relatives laughed uncomfortably, while others avoided my eyes. The implication was clear. I was not automatically stuck with time. I was conditional, provisional, a Parker, by paperwork rather than by right. When I finally found a moment to mention my recent promotion at work, Laura immediately cut in. Speaking of work, did I tell everyone that Blake is being considered for chief surgical resident, the youngest doctor ever to be considered for the position at Massachusetts General? Once again, my news went unacknowledged as the family congratulated Blake. I sat back in my chair, the excitement I had felt about sharing my achievement now deflated. During the main course, my cousin Taylor leaned over during a moment when others were distracted. Hey, I wanted to check if everything's okay with you financially, she whispered. What? Yes, of course. Why would you ask that? She looked embarrassed. It's just. Laura mentioned you'd been struggling since the pandemic. She said you might need to borrow money, but were too proud to ask. That's why she suggested we all be sensitive about financial topics tonight. I was stunned into silence. Nothing could be further from the truth. My firm had thrived during the market volatility of the pandemic, and my recent promotion came with a substantial bonus. Why would Laura spread such misinformation? Before I could process this revelation, Aunt Judith was commenting loudly, Margaret, Laura looks just like you did at her age. I was looking at old photos recently, and the resemblance is striking. Those Parker eyes and smile. It's remarkable how traits pass down. Margaret beamed with pride, while Laura basked in the comparison. No one seemed to notice or care about the implicit exclusion in such observations. Family loyalty is so important these days, Laura said, her eyes drifting meaningfully toward me. Knowing who you can really count on when things get tough. As I reached for my water glass, Blake gestured expansively, accidentally knocking over his red wine. The dark liquid spread rapidly across the white tablecloth and onto my dress. "Oh no, Laura!" exclaimed, dabbing ineffectually at the stain with a dry napkin, making it worse rather than better. "What a shame about your dress, Eden. You should go try to clean that up." The insincerity in her voice was unmistakable. This wasn't concern, it was satisfaction. I excused myself to the restroom again, this time spending several minutes attempting to salvage my dress. As I blotted the wine stain with cold water, I stared at my reflection. My eyes held a wounded expression I hadn't seen since my days in foster care, the look of someone trying desperately to belong in a place where they weren't wanted. For 15 years, I had believed I was a Parker. I had believed the adoption certificates and the family photos and the I love yous exchanged on holidays. I had believed I was home. Standing in that elegant restaurant bathroom, I suddenly wasn't sure what to believe anymore. This is about Mom and Dad, I reminded myself firmly. Their anniversary deserves to be celebrated regardless of whatever game Laura is playing. With renewed determination, I dried my hands and straightened my shoulders. I would make it through this dinner with grace and dignity. I refused to let Laura's behavior ruin this important milestone for the people who had given me a home when I had none. I just never imagined how much worse the evening was about to become. When I returned to the table, I discovered that the seating had been rearranged yet again. My chair had been moved to the very corner of the table, partially behind a decorative column. The intimate circular arrangement I had specifically requested when making the reservation had been changed to a rectangular configuration with my parents at the head surrounded by Laura and her husband, with me relegated to what felt like an afterthought. "We needed more space," Laura explained with a shrug when she noticed my confusion. "This works better for everyone." I silently took my new seat, now finding it difficult to even see some family members without leaning awkwardly around the column. The waiter approached with the main courses, having to stretch uncomfortably to place my plate in its awkward position. As everyone began eating, Laura stood up, tapping her glass with a spoon. The crystalline ring silenced conversation as all eyes turned to her. "I'd like to make a toast to the most amazing parents anyone could ask for," she began, her voice carrying throughout the restaurant. "Dad, Mom, 35 years of marriage is an incredible achievement. You've shown me what true love looks like, what family really means." She raised her glass higher. The Parker family has a proud heritage stretching back generations. We come from a line of strong, dedicated people who understand that blood is thicker than water. Her eyes flickered briefly to me before continuing. Who understand that family isn't just a word, it's a bond that connects us through our shared DNA, through the traits we pass down, through the history that flows in our veins. Several relatives nodded, appreciatively, seemingly oblivious to the pointed nature of her words. My parents smiled up at their biological daughter, their expressions warm with pride. To Thomas and Margaret Parker, Laura concluded, "Thank you for the legacy you've created for our family line that will continue through generations to come." Everyone raised their glasses in unison. To Thomas and Margaret, I lifted my glass as well, then gathered my courage to add to the toast. "I'd also like to say—" "Oh, and one more thing," Laura spoke over me, not even acknowledging that I had begun to speak. Blake and I have been waiting for the perfect moment to share some news. She paused, dramatically building anticipation. We're expecting Mom, Dad, you're going to be grandparents this winter. The table erupted in excited exclamations and congratulations. My mother burst into tears of joy, while my father stood to embrace Laura and shake Blake's hand vigorously. In the commotion, no one remembered that I had been about to speak. As the excitement settled, conversations broke out around the table, all centered on Laura's pregnancy. How far along was she? Did they want a boy or a girl? Had they thought about names? We're thinking Thomas for a boy, after Dad, of course, Laura announced, and Margaret for a girl to honor Mom. Keeping those family names alive is so important to us. My cousin Ryan raised his glass again. To the next generation of true Parkers. I sat silently, the untouched food on my plate growing cold. 15 years of believing I belonged had been systematically dismantled over the course of a single dinner. Every comment, every toast, every story shared seemed designed to emphasize one clear message: I was not, and never would be, a real member of this family. Then came the moment that would permanently alter my relationship with the Parkers. Laura, still glowing from the excitement of her pregnancy announcement, looked directly at me across the table. With every relative watching, she said loudly, "Eden, why don't you go find another table? This one's for family, not adopted girls." The restaurant seemed to go silent around us. At nearby tables, conversations faltered, as diners turned to observe the uncomfortable scene unfolding. Laura continued, her voice carrying clearly in the sudden quiet. I mean, it's great that Mom and Dad took you in when you needed somewhere to go, but this is a celebration of our family line, our heritage, our blood. You don't really fit into that narrative, do you? I stared at her in shock, unable to process that she had actually said those words aloud in public on our parents' anniversary. I turned to Thomas and Margaret, waiting for them to object to defend me, to remind everyone that I was their daughter too. But they didn't. My father studied his plate intently, suddenly very interested in cutting a piece of steak. My mother fidgeted with her napkin, her eyes downcast. Neither spoke up. Aunt Judith gave an uncomfortable laugh. Laura always speaks her mind, doesn't she? Uncle Philip nodded. The Parkers have never been ones to sugarcoat things. Straight shooters, all of them. Cousin Taylor looked uncomfortable, but remained silent. Blake smirked slightly, his arm around Laura's shoulders in apparent support. Only young Sophia, at 19, the youngest cousin present, showed any sign of distress at what was happening, her eyes wide with dismay. Inside, I was collapsing. 15 years of security, of belonging, of family identity, all revealed as an illusion in a single devastating moment. The pain was physical, a crushing weight on my chest, making it difficult to breathe. My hands trembled beneath the table, and I pressed them against my thighs to steady them. But outwardly, I remained composed. Years in the foster system had taught me to mask pain, to never let others see vulnerability. I would not give Laura the satisfaction of seeing me break. "I see," I said quietly, my voice somehow remaining steady despite the earthquake occurring within me. "Thank you for clarifying where I stand." I could feel every eye in the restaurant on me. The other diners, the waitstaff, all witnessing my public rejection. Some looked away in second-hand embarrassment. Others watched with the morbid fascination of rubberneckers passing a car accident. In that moment, memories flashed rapidly through my mind. Margaret teaching me to bake her famous apple pie. Thomas helping me move into my college dorm. Family Christmases, where stockings hung for each of us. My name embroidered just like Laura's. The day they had officially adopted me, telling me I would always have a home with them. "You're a Parker now," Thomas had promised. Had that always been a lie? The waiter approached our table, his expression professionally neutral, despite having witnessed the uncomfortable scene. "Is everything all right here?" he asked, looking around uncertainly. "Everything's fine," Laura answered, before anyone else could speak. "We're celebrating my parents' anniversary and my pregnancy announcement." The waiter nodded, clearly eager to escape the tension. As he turned to leave, I made a decision. "Actually," I said, my voice stronger now, "I'd like the bill, please." "Dad's handling that later," Laura interjected. "No," I said firmly. "I'd like the complete bill for the entire party, now please." The waiter looked between us, in confusion. "It's all on me tonight," I clarified, making eye contact with him. "For the entire table, every person, every dish, every drink." He nodded in understanding and retreated to prepare the bill. The family continued their conversations as if nothing unusual had happened, as if I hadn't just been publicly expelled from their ranks. Laura launched into stories about her pregnancy symptoms, keeping the attention firmly on herself. My parents, who had raised me for 15 years, who had promised me a forever home, said nothing in my defense. They simply carried on laughing at Laura's jokes, discussing baby names, pretending I wasn't sitting there with my world crumbling around me. I sat perfectly still, my back straight, my expression neutral, even as I felt something inside me breaking beyond repair. The identity I had built as Eden Parker was being stripped away in front of an audience, and the people who should have protected me were participating in my humiliation. The waiter returned with a leather folder, placing it discreetly in front of me. Inside was the bill for 15 people, including multiple courses and expensive wines that Laura had ordered throughout the evening. The total, $2,830. I looked at the figure without flinching, though it represented a significant amount, even with my recent promotion. Without hesitation, I removed my credit card and placed it in the folder, signing the receipt with a steady hand when the waiter returned. As I took a final sip of my water, I hadn't touched the wine all evening. I accepted that this moment marked the end of one chapter of my life and the beginning of another. The fantasy of being a Parker was over. It was time to face reality. But reality had one more surprise in store for me. "Just a moment, please," came a familiar voice from behind my chair. I turned to see Gabriela Martinez standing beside the waiter, her presence commanding immediate attention from everyone at the table. At 45, Gabriela exuded confidence and authority in her tailored suit, her dark hair swept into an elegant updo. "Eden, I thought that was you," she said warmly, placing a hand on my shoulder. "I was in my office going over the quarterly numbers when Carlos told me you were here." The family watched in confusion, as Gabriela, clearly someone important in the restaurant, greeted me with such familiarity. "Everyone, this is Gabriela Martinez," I explained, finding my voice again. "She owns Bellamy's." "And 4 other restaurants across Boston," Gabriela added with a smile. Though I couldn't do it without my business partner's financial expertise. She squeezed my shoulder affectionately. Laura's smug expression faltered. "Business partner. Eden didn't tell you." Gabriela looked surprised. "She's been my financial advisor for years, but during the pandemic, when restaurants were struggling, Eden approached me with an investment opportunity. She now owns 30% of Martinez Hospitality Group." The shock around the table was palpable. My mother's mouth actually fell open, while my father straightened in his chair, suddenly paying attention. That last capital injection allowed us to not only weather the pandemic, but expand. Gabriela continued, seemingly oblivious to the tension. "The new location in Cambridge is exceeding all projections, and the Chicago opening next month is already fully booked for the first 3 weeks." Laura's face had lost its color. "Eden is an owner of this restaurant," And the other 4, Gabriella corrected cheerfully. Though she's too modest to talk about it usually, Eden prefers to focus on helping her clients build their own success. My parents exchanged glances, finally breaking their silence. Eden, you never told us about this investment, my mother said, her voice carrying a note of hurt that felt utterly hypocritical after her earlier silence. What exactly is going on here? My father asked, looking between Gabriella and me with newfound interest. Before I could respond, Gabriella continued. Eden saved this restaurant, Mr. Parker. When banks were refusing loans to the hospitality industry, she structured private equity financing that kept all 173 of my employees on payroll throughout the shutdowns. Not a single person lost their health care during the worst health crisis of our lifetime. As if on cue, several staff members approached our table. Carlos, the head chef, nodded respectfully to me. Miss Parker, it's good to see you again. That investment in the new kitchen equipment has revolutionized our efficiency. The sommelier stepped forward next. Miss Parker, I've been meaning to thank you for approving the expansion of our wine program. The Collector's Series has been extraordinarily successful. One by one, key staff members came to greet me, each expressing gratitude for specific improvements I had helped implement. All the while my family, the people who had just minutes ago dismissed me as not truly one of them, watched in stunned silence. Laura's earlier confidence had completely evaporated, replaced by visible discomfort as the power dynamic shifted dramatically. Blake looked between his wife and me, clearly recalculating his assessment of his sister-in-law. I stood up, finding strength in the respect these hard-working professionals showed me, respect earned through actions rather than accidents of birth. Gabriella, thank you for coming to say hello. I've just settled the bill for my parents' anniversary dinner. Gabriella glanced at the leather folder on the table, then back at me with understanding in her eyes. She had known me long enough to read between the lines of the situation. Absolutely not, she said firmly, picking up the folder. The owners of Martinez Hospitality Group do not pay for meals in their own establishments. This dinner is on the house as a celebration of your parents' anniversary. She tore the receipt in half with a flourish, handing the pieces to the waiter. Carlos has prepared a special dessert for the occasion. Please enjoy the rest of your evening. As the staff dispersed back to their duties, I remained standing, finally ready to address the family that had just rejected me. For 15 years, I began my voice quiet, but clear. I have tried to earn my place at this table. I've sought your approval, your acceptance, your love. I believed that if I was successful enough, kind enough, generous enough, you would eventually see me as a true Parker. I looked at each person in turn, ending with my parents. Tonight has shown me that no achievement, no contribution, no amount of love on my part will ever be enough to overcome the fact that we don't share DNA. Laura shifted uncomfortably in her seat, no longer looking triumphant. I want to thank you all for this clarity, I continued. It's painful, but necessary. I now understand that I've been trying to belong in a place where complete belonging was never possible. My father finally found his voice. Eden, you're overreacting. Of course you're part of the family. Am I asked simply. When Laura said I should find another table because I'm not family, not a single one of you contradicted her, including you, Dad, including you, Mom. They had no response to this plain truth. Congratulations on 35 years of marriage, I said to my parents. And congratulations on your pregnancy, Laura. I wish you all the best. I turned to Gabriella, who had remained supportively by my side. I think I will find another table now. As I moved to leave, Blake suddenly spoke up. Eden, wait. Your connections in the restaurant industry could be really valuable for our family. Maybe we should talk about opportunities for collaboration. The transparent attempt to now capitalize on my success after participating in my humiliation was so grotesque that I didn't even dignify it with a direct response. Ownership does have its privileges, I said instead. For instance, I can ensure that Blake Thornton is never again able to secure a reservation at any Martinez hospitality property. Gabriella nodded crisply. I'll update our system immediately. As the implications of this sank in that Blake would be blacklisted from 5 of Boston's most prestigious restaurants, several family members began to reconsider their positions. Eden, honey, you know Laura sometimes speaks without thinking, Aunt Judith offered weakly. And we do think of you as family, Uncle Philip added, in our own way. But it was too late for such hollow reassurances. The truth had been revealed, and there was no going back. The family that had never truly accepted me was now scrambling to maintain connections with the successful businesswoman they had dismissed as the adopted outsider. In that moment, standing tall while they sat in uncomfortable silence, I felt a profound shift within myself. The desperate need to belong, to be accepted by these people, began to dissolve. In its place came something unexpected: freedom. I appreciate the sudden interest in my business success, I said evenly. But I'm afraid that's not how relationships work. They're not transactional. They're not based on what someone can do for you when it's convenient. My words landed heavily in the silence that had fallen over our section of the restaurant. Even nearby tables had grown quiet diners, pretending not to listen while clearly hanging on every word. Eden, my mother began, her voice trembling slightly. We love you. You know that. I looked at her, this woman who had brushed my hair when I was sick with the flu my first year with them, who had helped me pick out my prom dress, who had sat silent while her biological daughter told me I didn't belong. I believe you love me in your way, I replied softly. But love without respect, without defense, without true inclusion, that's not enough. Not anymore. Gabriella touched my elbow gently. Eden, there are some people at the bar who've been waiting to surprise you. Would you like to join them instead? I glanced toward the bar area and saw several familiar faces pretending not to watch the drama unfolding. My assistant Diane was there, along with my colleagues Jacob and Mina, from Hamilton and Reed. My best friend Zoe, who had known me since college, waved discreetly. You arranged a surprise celebration, I asked Gabriella. Of course, she replied. We've been planning it for weeks. Your work family wanted to celebrate your promotion properly. The contrast couldn't have been more stark between the people who had gathered specifically to celebrate my achievement and the family who couldn't even acknowledge it. I'd love to join them, I said, feeling the weight lifting from my shoulders with each step away from the Parkers' table. As I turned to leave, I felt a light touch on my arm. It was Sophia, the youngest cousin, her eyes filled with genuine distress. Can I talk to you for a minute? She asked quietly. We stepped away from the table together, finding a quiet corner near the restaurant's elegant staircase. I'm so sorry about what happened, Sophia said, her voice hushed but intense. The way Laura spoke to you was horrible, and I should have said something. I studied her young face, seeing sincerity there that had been absent from the others. Laura's been talking to everyone for weeks, Sophia continued, telling us all these stories about you, that you were jealous of her, that you were only using the family for connections, that you'd been lying about your job. None of that is true, I said quietly. I know, Sophia replied. I never believed it, but Laura can be persuasive. And Aunt Margaret and Uncle Thomas never contradicted her, so people started to accept her version. Why is she doing this? I asked the question that had been burning inside me all evening. Sophia hesitated. She's always been jealous of you, your success, your independence. When you left for college, Aunt Margaret and Uncle Thomas were so proud talking about you constantly. Laura hated it. And now that she's pregnant, she seems determined to secure her position as the only real daughter. The pieces clicked into place. Laura's behavior wasn't new. It was simply the culmination of resentment that had been building for years now, emboldened by the leverage she believed her pregnancy gave her. "Thank you for telling me this," I said, genuinely touched by Sophia's courage. "I'm applying to colleges right now," she admitted. "Finance programs, actually. I've always admired your career. Would it be okay if I still reached out to you sometimes for advice?" In that moment, looking at this young woman who had chosen integrity over family pressure, I realized that meaningful connections weren't defined by blood or adoption papers. They were built on respect, honesty, and mutual support. "I'd like that very much," I told her, writing my personal email on a business card. "And Sophia, thank you for being the one person at that table with the courage to speak truth." With that, I walked away from the Parkers' anniversary celebration and toward the group waiting for me at the bar. As I approached, they erupted in cheers. "There she is, the newest partner at Hamilton and Reed Jacob, called Raising a Champagne Flute." Diane rushed forward to hug me. "We've been waiting for ages. I was starting to think you'd never leave that family dinner." "Family dinner," I repeated softly. The phrase suddenly held new meaning. Gabriella led me to a private dining room behind the bar where a celebration had been arranged. A banner reading, "Congratulations," Eden hung across one wall, and a small table of gifts sat in the corner. "We're so proud of you," Mina said, handing me a glass of champagne, youngest partner in the firm's history. As my colleagues and friends surrounded me with genuine enthusiasm for my achievement, the contrast with the dinner I'd just left became even more pronounced. Here, no one questioned my right to be celebrated. No one undermined my accomplishments or dismissed my contributions. "I arranged for your favorite dessert," Zoe said, linking her arm through mine. "That ridiculous chocolate thing with the gold leaf that costs as much as a small car." I laughed, feeling the tension of the evening beginning to dissipate. "You know me too well." "Of course I do. We've been friends for 12 years, she replied, then lowered her voice. "Are you okay? You seem shaken." I hesitated, not wanting to bring my personal drama into this professional celebration. But Zoe had been my closest friend since freshman year of college. If anyone would understand, it was her. "My family dinner was challenging," I admitted. "I'll tell you about it later." Zoe squeezed my arm. "Whatever happened, you're with your people now." My phone buzzed with a text message. It was from my mother. "Eden, please come back to the table. We need to talk about what happened." I stared at the message for a long moment, then silenced my phone and slipped it back into my purse. Whatever conversation needed to happen with the Parkers, it wouldn't be tonight. Tonight was for celebrating with people who valued me for exactly who I was. As the evening progressed, Gabriella shared stories of our business partnership, detailing how my financial strategies had saved not just her restaurants, but several other local businesses during the pandemic. My colleagues toasted my promotion and the clients I had mentored. Zoe reminisced about our college days, how I had always been the one with a 5-year plan, while she had been just trying to make it to Friday without failing calculus. In that warm circle of authentic connection, I began to process the painful revelation from the family dinner. The Parkers had given me a home during critical years, yes, but they had never fully given me the unconditional belonging I had sought. Perhaps that had been too much to expect from an adoption that occurred when I was already 17, old enough to be shaped by years of abandonment and temporary homes. But here among these people who had chosen to be in my life, who celebrated my successes and supported me through challenges, I had found something just as valuable. Not a replacement family, but a community of my own creation. People connected to me not by obligation or documentation, but by genuine affection and mutual respect. Gabriella pulled me aside as dessert was being served. "I hope you don't mind that I interrupted earlier. The look on your face when I arrived. I could tell something was very wrong." "Thank you for that," I said sincerely. "Your timing was providential." She nodded, her expression growing serious. "I recognize that look, you know. I saw it in the mirror many times after my own family rejected me for choosing a career over the marriage they had arranged." I hadn't known this about her background. "How did you handle it?" "Not well at first," she admitted. "I spent years trying to prove my worth to people who had already decided I was a disappointment. It took time to realize that family, true family, isn't always about blood." As Gabriella shared her own journey of estrangement and rebuilding, I felt the first glimmers of a path forward through my own pain. The evening that had begun with humiliation had transformed into something unexpected, a catalyst for growth, for reconsideration of what family truly meant. By the time we cut the celebration cake, decorated with an edible replica of Hamilton and Reed's logo, I had reached a decision. The Parkers would always be important to me. They had given me stability when I desperately needed it. But I would no longer measure my worth by their acceptance or lack thereof. It was time to redefine family on my own terms. As the celebration wound down, my phone had accumulated 6 missed calls and 11 text messages from various Parkers. They could wait. Tonight I was exactly where I belonged. 6 months after that fateful anniversary dinner, I sat in my new office overlooking Boston Harbor. The expanded corner suite reflected my growing responsibilities at Hamilton and Reed, with one wall dedicated to framed thank you letters from clients whose financial futures I had helped secure. The journey of these past months had been both painful and liberating. After the public rejection at Bellamy's, I had taken 2 weeks of personal leave to process what had happened. During that time, I began working with Dr. Levine, a therapist specializing in adoption and family trauma. Our weekly sessions helped me understand that my worth was never dependent on the Parkers' validation, though their rejection had reopened wounds from my earlier childhood abandonment. The need for parental approval doesn't automatically disappear when we become adults. Dr. Levine had explained during one particularly illuminating session. Especially for adoptees who have already experienced primal rejection. Through therapy and support groups for adult adoptees, I gradually came to see that my relationship with the Parkers could be reframed. They had provided important stability during formative years, but expecting them to fulfill all my needs for belonging had placed an impossible burden on that relationship. Real healing meant building a life rich with connections that affirmed my inherent value, not as a Parker, but as Eden. With this new perspective, I channeled my pain into purpose by establishing the Fresh Start Scholarship, a program providing financial support and mentoring for young adults aging out of the foster care system. The first cohort of 5 scholars were now thriving in their first year of college, each one receiving not just tuition assistance, but the ongoing support many former foster youth lack. My relationship with the Parkers had undergone its own transformation. 3 weeks after the anniversary dinner, I finally agreed to meet my parents at a neutral location, a coffee shop near my office. The conversation was difficult but necessary. "We failed you that night," my father had admitted, his usual confidence subdued. "We were shocked by Laura's behavior, but that's no excuse for our silence. We've always considered you our daughter, my mother added tearfully. But we realized we never fully understood what you needed from us as parents of an adopted child. We educated ourselves. We've been going to parent support groups. Their efforts were sincere, if late in coming. We established new boundaries I would attend, some family gatherings but not all. I would maintain my relationship with them independent of Laura. Most importantly, I required their explicit support if Laura ever again attempted to exclude or diminish me. As for Laura herself, our relationship remained distant. Her pregnancy progressed, and she made several awkward attempts to reconnect, especially after learning more details about my financial success. I maintained polite but limited contact, making it clear that trust once broken required more than expedient reconciliation to rebuild. She's jealous of you, my mother had confided during one of our monthly lunches. She always has been. Your independence, your success, these are things she struggles with. Understanding Laura's insecurity didn't excuse her behavior, but it helped me view her actions with compassion rather than bitterness. Her need to assert her position as the real daughter said more about her insecurities than my worthiness. My relationship with young Sophia, however, flourished. I became her mentor as she navigated college applications, and her frequent texts and calls became a bright spot in my weeks. She was now a freshman at Boston University's business school, following a path similar to mine, but with more support than I had at her age. Most significantly, my definition of family expanded beyond blood relations or legal documentation. Gabriella's family had embraced me wholeheartedly, inviting me to Sunday dinners and holiday celebrations where I was valued simply for being myself. My friendship with Zoe deepened as she supported me through the difficult months of family renegotiation. My colleagues at Hamilton and Reed, particularly Diane, Jacob, and Mina, formed a tight-knit professional family that celebrated each other's successes without competition or conditions. Today marked another milestone. I had received notification of a DNA match through an ancestry service I had joined. A potential half-sister on my biological mother's side had reached out expressing interest in connecting. Unlike my teenage self, desperate for family at any cost, I approached this possibility from a position of strength rather than need. Whether this connection developed into something meaningful or not, I no longer hinged my sense of belonging on any single relationship. As I prepared for dinner at Bellamy's, now a weekly tradition, with my chosen family of friends, I reflected on the painful anniversary dinner that had ultimately set me free. The public rejection that had seemed devastating had become the catalyst for building a more authentic life. The truth I had discovered was both simple and profound. Family isn't defined by DNA or even by adoption papers. Family consists of the people who make space for you to be fully yourself, who defend your dignity even when it's difficult, who celebrate your joys and support you through pain without conditions or comparisons. My name is Eden, and I am no longer seeking to be a Parker or any other surname. I am whole and worthy exactly as I am surrounded by people who choose me daily, just as I choose them. The family I have now isn't the one I expected, but it's the one that truly sees me and that has made all the difference. Have you ever had to redefine what family means to you? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and like this video so others going through similar experiences can find this message. Remember that blood doesn't always make a family. Sometimes the strongest bonds are the ones we build ourselves. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I'm sending love to anyone who has ever felt like they don't belong. You do belong, just maybe not where you first thought.